Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the Gracious, ever merciful. All distinguished guests, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Peace and blessing of Allah be upon you all. I would like to first of all take this opportunity to thank you all for taking time to come and listen to what I have to say. I have been requested to speak about a subject that is extremely vast and wide-ranging. It has many different aspects, and therefore it is not possible for me to cover all of them in the short time available. And the subject that I have been asked to speak about is the establishment of world peace. Certainly, this is the most vital and pressing issue facing the world today. However, as the time is limited, I will only briefly give the Islamic viewpoint on the establishment of peace through just and equal relations between nations. The truth is that peace and justice are inseparable. You cannot have one without the other. And certainly, this principle is something that all wise and intelligent people understand. Leaving aside those people who are determined to create disorder in the world. No one can ever claim that in any society, country, or even the entire world, there can be disorder or a lack of peace where justice and fair dealing exists. Nevertheless, we find that in many parts of the world, disorder and a lack of peace are prevalent. Such disorder is visible both internally within countries and externally in terms of the relations between various nations. Such disorder and strife exists even though all governments claim to make policies that are based on justice. And all claim that the establishment of peace is their primary objective. Yet, in general, there is little doubt that restlessness and anxiety is increasing in the world, and so disorder is spreading. This clearly proves that somewhere along the line, the requirements of justice are not being fulfilled. Therefore, there is an urgent need to try and end inequality wherever and whenever it exists. And so, as the worldwide head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, I would like to make a few observations about the need for and the ways to achieve peace based on justice. The Ahmadiyya Muslim community is purely religious community. It is our firm belief that the Messiah and Reformer who was destined to appear in this age and enlighten the world as to Islam's true teachings has indeed arrived. We believe that the founder of our community, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian, was that very promised Messiah and Reformer, and thus we have accepted him. He presses upon his followers to act and true teachings of Islam that are based on the Holy Quran. Therefore, Everything that I will say in relation to establishing peace and in relation to conducting just international relations will be based on Quranic teachings. In relation to achieving world peace, all of you regularly express your opinions and indeed make great efforts. Your creative and intelligent minds allow you to present great ideas, plans, and indeed a vision of peace. Thus, this issue does not require me to speak from a worldly or political perspective. But instead, my entire focus will be on how to establish peace based on religion. And for this purpose, I shall, as I have earlier said, present some very important guidelines based on the teachings of the Holy Quran. It is important to always remember that human knowledge and intellect is not perfect, but is in fact limited. Thus, when making decisions or forming thoughts, often certain factors enter human minds which can cloud judgment and lead to a person trying to fulfill his own rights. Ultimately, this can lead to an unjust outcome and decision being made. However, God's law is perfect, and so no vested interests or unfair provisions exist. This is because God only desires for the good and betterment of His creation. And therefore, His law is based entirely on justice. The day the people of the world come to recognize and understand this crucial point will be the day that the foundation for true and everlasting peace will be laid. Otherwise, we continue to find that although efforts are endlessly made to establish world peace, yet they are unable to provide any worthwhile results. After the conclusion of the First World War, the leaders of certain countries desired for good and peaceful relations between all nations in future. Thus, in an effort to achieve world peace, the League of Nations was formed. Its principal aim was to maintain world peace and to prevent future wars from breaking out. Unfortunately, the rules of the League and resolutions it passed had certain flaws and weaknesses, and so they did not properly protect the rights of all peoples and all nations equally. Hence, as a result of the inequalities that existed, long-term peace could not prevail. The efforts of League failed, and this led directly to World War II. We are all aware of the unparalleled destruction and devastation that ensued, where around 75 million people globally lost their lives, many of whom were innocent civilians. That war should have been more than enough to open the eyes of the world. It should have been a means to developing wise policies that granted all parties their due rights, based on justice, and thus proved to be a means of establishing peace in the world. The world's governments at the time did endeavor to some extent to try and establish peace, and hence the United Nations was established. However, it soon became quite apparent that the noble and overarching objective underpinning the United Nations could not be fulfilled. Indeed, today, certain governments quite openly make statements that prove its failure. What does Islam say in relation to international relations that are based on justice and so a means of establishing peace? The Holy Quran, in the Holy Quran, God Almighty has made it clear that whilst our nationalities or ethnic backgrounds act as a means of identity, they do not entitle or validate any form of superiority of any kind. The Quran thus makes clear that all people are born equal. Furthermore, in final sermon ever delivered by the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace and blessing of Allah be upon him, he instructed all Muslims to always remember that an Arab is not superior to a non-Arab, and nor is a non-Arab superior to an Arab. And he taught that a white person is not superior to a black person, and nor is a black person superior to a white person. Thus, it is clear teaching of Islam that the people of all nationalities and all races are equal. It is also made clear that all people should be granted equal rights without any discrimination or prejudice. This is the key and golden principle that lays the foundation for harmony between different groups and nations and for the establishment of peace. However, today we find that there is division and separation between powerful and weaker nations. For example, in the United Nations, we find that there is a distinction made between certain countries. Thus, in the Security Council, there are some permanent members and some non-permanent members. This division has proved to be an internal source of anxiety and frustration, and thus we regularly hear reports of certain countries protesting against this inequality. Islam teaches absolute justice and equality in all matters, and so we find another very crucial guideline in chapter 5, verse 3 of the Holy Quran. In this verse, it states that to fully comply with the requirements of justice, it is necessary to treat even those people who go beyond all limits in their hatred and enmity with fairness and equity. And the Quran teaches that wherever and whoever counsels you towards goodness and virtue, you should accept it. And wherever and whoever counsels you towards sinful or unjust behavior, you should reject it. A question that naturally arises is that what is the standard of justice required by Islam? In chapter 4, verse 136, the Holy Quran states that even if you have to testify against yourself or your parents or your most loved ones, then you must do so in order to uphold justice and to uphold the truth. Powerful and rich countries should not usurp the rights of the poor and weaker countries in an effort to preserve their own rights, and nor should they deal with the poorer nations in an unjust fashion. On the other hand, the poor and weaker nations should not seek to inflict harm on the powerful or wealthy nations whenever the opportunity arises. Instead, both sides should endeavor to fully abide by the principles of justice, and indeed this is a matter of crucial importance in maintaining peaceful relations between countries. Another requirement for peace between nations based on justice is given in chapter 15 of the Holy Quran, in verse 59, where it states that no party should ever look enviously at the resources and wealth of others. And similarly, no country should seek to unjustly appropriate or take over the resources of another country on the false pretext of trying to assist or support them. Thus, on the basis of providing technical expertise, governments should not take advantage of other nations by making unjust trade deals or contracts. And similarly, on the basis of providing expertise or assistance, governments should not try to take control of the natural resources or assets of the developing nations. Where less educated people or governments need to be taught how to properly utilize their natural resources, then this should be done. Then nations and governments should always seek to serve and help those less fortunate. However, such service should not be rendered with an aim of achieving national or political benefits or as a means to fulfill vested interests. We find that in the past 6 or 7 decades, the United Nations has launched many programs or foundations aiming to help the poor countries to progress. Towards this effort, they have explored the natural resources of the developing nations. However, despite these efforts, none of the poorer countries have reached this stage or level of the developed nations. One reason for this is certainly wide-ranging corruption by many of the governments of those underdeveloped countries. With regret, though, I must say that despite this as a means to further their own interests, the developed nations have continued to deal with such governments. Trade deals, international aid, and business contracts have continued to be processed. And as a result, the frustration and restlessness of the poor and deprived segments of society have continued to increase, and this has led to rebellion and internal disorder within those countries. The poor people of the developing countries have become so frustrated that they have turned against not only their own leaders, but also the big powers as well. This has played into the hands of the extremist groups who have taken advantage of the frustrations and so have been able to encourage such people towards joining their groups and supporting their hate-filled ideology. And the ultimate result of this has been that the peace of the world has been destroyed. Thus, Islam has drawn our attention to various means for peace. It requires absolute justice. It requires truthful testimony to always be given. It requires that our glances are not cast enviously in the direction of the wealth of others. and it requires that the developed nations put aside their own vested interests and instead help and serve the less developed and poorer nations with a truly selfless attitude and spirit. If all of these factors are observed, then true peace will be established. If, despite all these aforementioned measures, any country transgresses all limits and attacks another country and seeks to unjustly take control of its resources, then other countries should certainly take measures to stop such cruelty. But they should always act with justice when doing so. The circumstances for taking action based on Islamic teachings are detailed in the Holy Quran in chapter 49, where it says, it teaches that where two nations are in dispute and this leads to war, then other governments should strongly counsel them towards dialogue and diplomacy so that they can come to an agreement and reconciliation on the basis of a negotiated settlement. However, if one of the parties does not accept the terms of agreement and wages war, then other countries should unite together and fight to stop that aggressor. When the aggressive nation is defeated and he agrees to mutual negotiation, then all parties should work together an agreement, should work towards an agreement which leads to long-standing peace and reconciliation. Harsh and unjust conditions should not be enforced that lead to the hands of any nation being tied, because in the long term, that will lead to restlessness, which will ferment and spread. And the result of such restlessness will be further disorder. In circumstances where a third-party government seeks to bring about reconciliation between two parties, then it should act with sincerity and total impartiality. And this impartiality should remain even if one of the parties speaks against it. And so the third party should display no anger in such circumstances and should seek no revenge or act in any unfair manner. All parties should be afforded their due rights. Thus, for the requirements of justice to be fulfilled, it is essential that the countries who are negotiating a settlement should themselves not seek to fulfill their own personal interests or to try and derive benefit unduly from either country. They should not interfere unjustly or pressure either of the parties unfairly. The natural resources of any country should not be taken advantage of. Unnecessary and unfair restrictions should not be placed upon such countries, because this is neither just and nor can it ever prove to be a source of improving relations between countries. Due to time constraints, I have mentioned these points only very briefly. In short, if we desire peace to be established in the world, then we must leave aside our personal and national interests for the greater good, and instead we must establish mutual relations that are based entirely on justice. Otherwise, you might agree with me, some of you, due to the alliances, blocs may be formed in future, or even I can say they have started forming. It is not unlikely that disorder will continue to increase in the world, which will ultimately lead to a huge destruction. The effects of such devastation and warfare will surely last for many generations. And so the United States, as the world's largest power, should play its role in acting with true justice and with such good intentions as I have described. If it does so, then the world will always remember with great admiration your great efforts. It is my prayer that this becomes a reality. Thank you very much. Thank you again. According to our tradition, at the end of the function, we normally do silent prayer. So I will do the silent prayer. The Ahmadis will follow me, and all of you, our guests, can pray in their own way. Please, silent prayer. Ameen.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون.
Stay with us after this short break, as next we bring you a roundup of the latest news and events of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community from around the world.
حضرت مسیح موعود علیہ الصلوۃ والسلام فرماتے ہیں، خدا نے مجھے دنیا میں اس لیے بھیجا کہ تا میں حلم اور خلق اور نرمی سے گمگشتہ لوگوں کو خدا اور اس کی پاک ہدایتوں کی طرف کھینچوں، اور وہ نور جو مجھے دیا گیا ہے اس کی روشنی سے لوگوں کو راہ راست پر چلاؤں۔ انسان کو اس بات کی ضرورت ہے کہ ایسے دلائل اس کو ملیں جن کی روح سے اس کو یقین آ جائے کہ خدا ہے، کیونکہ ایک بڑا حصہ دنیا کا اسی راہ سے ہلاک ہو رہا ہے کہ ان کو خدا تعالیٰ کے وجود اور اس کی الہامی ہدایتوں پر ایمان نہیں ہے، اور خدا کی ہستی کے ماننے کے لیے اس سے زیادہ صاف اور قریب الفہم اور کوئی راہ نہیں کہ وہ غیب کی باتیں اور پوشیدہ واقعات اور آئندہ زمانے کی خبریں اپنے خاص لوگوں کو بتلاتا ہے، اور وہ نہا در نہا اسرار جن کا دریافت کرنا انسانی طاقتوں سے بالاتر ہے اپنے مقربوں پر ظاہر کر دیتا ہے۔ سو خدا نے میرے پہ یہ احسان کیا ہے جو اس نے تمام دنیا میں سے مجھے اس بات کے لیے منتخب کیا ہے کہ تا وہ اپنے نشانوں سے گمراہ لوگوں کو راہ پہ لاوے۔
محبت کے نغمات گائیں گے ہم، اخوت کی تانیں اڑائیں گے ہم۔
السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ۔ ایم ٹی انٹرنیشنل کے لندن اسٹوڈیو سے عالمی جماعتی خبروں کے بلیٹن کے ساتھ حاضر ہیں۔ حضرت خلیفۃ المسیح الخامس ایدہ اللہ تعالیٰ بن نصر العزیز نے مورخہ 24 اپریل سن 2020 کو مسجد مبارک اسلام آباد ٹلفرڈ میں خطبہ جمعہ ارشاد فرمایا اور نماز پڑھائی۔ حضور انور کے خطبہ جمعہ کا نہایت مختصر خلاصہ پیش خدمت ہے جو اصل متن کا ہرگز متبادل نہیں۔ آج کے خطبہ جمعہ میں حضور انور ایدہ اللہ تعالیٰ بن نصر العزیز نے رمضان کے حوالے سے حضرت مسیح موعود علیہ الصلوۃ والسلام کے چند اقتباسات پیش کیے اور اس مہینے میں ہماری ذمہ داریوں کی طرف توجہ دلائی۔ نیز حضور نے موجودہ حالات کو پیش نظر رکھتے ہوئے روزہ رکھنے کے متعلق ہدایات فرمائیں۔
آج کل وائرس کی بیماری کی وجہ سے لوگ سوال کرتے ہیں کہ گلا خشک ہو جائے گا، زیادہ امکان بڑھ جائے گا بیماری کا، روزہ رکھیں یا نہ رکھیں۔ میں کوئی عمومی فتویٰ یا فیصلہ نہیں دیتا اس بارے میں یہی عموماً لکھتا ہوں کہ تم لوگ اپنی حالت دیکھ کر خود فیصلہ کرو اور پاک دل ہو کر تقوی پر قائم رہتے ہوئے اپنے دل سے فتویٰ لو۔ قرآن کریم کی واضح ہدایت ہے کہ مریض ہو تو نہ رکھو۔ مریض ہونے کے امکان پر کہ مریض بن جائیں گے روزہ چھوڑنا یہ غلط ہے، جیسا کہ حضرت مسیح علیہ السلام نے فرمایا ہے کہ پھر تو ایک عذر سے دوسرا عذر اور ایک بہانے سے دوسرا بہانہ بنتا چلا جائے گا۔ اگر کوئی کہے کہ ڈاکٹر کہتے ہیں کہ یہ مشکل ہو سکتی ہے، تو میں نے مختلف ماہرین ڈاکٹروں سے رائے لی ہے، ان کی رائے میں بھی اختلاف ہے ڈاکٹروں کی اپنی۔ بعض ماہرین نے واضح لکھا کہ یہ کوئی یقینی بات نہیں ہے کہ روزے سے بیماری ضرور آئے گی۔ ہاں، اگر آثار ظاہر ہوں، کھانسی یا ہلکا بخار بھی ہو تو روزہ چھوڑ دیں، یا اور کوئی سمٹم دیکھیں تو روزہ چھوڑ دیں۔ اگر رکھا ہوا ہے تو توڑ دیں۔ جو ڈاکٹروں میں سے بھی جو اس بات کا رجحان رکھتے ہیں کہ نہیں رکھنا چاہیے، یا بعض شرطیں ایسی عائد کرتے ہیں، اس کا نتیجہ یہی نکلتا ہے آخر میں کہ نہ رکھو تو بہتر ہے، ان کی واضح رائے، وہ بھی واضح رائے نہیں رکھتے، ڈراتے بھی ہیں اور ساتھ ہی یہ بھی کہتے ہیں کہ خوراک کا خیال رکھ کر پھر رکھے جائیں۔ اب جو غریب لوگ ہیں وہ کس حد تک یہاں کس چیز کا خیال رکھیں خوراک کا۔ تو بہرحال مختلف آراء دیکھ کر تو یہی رائے قائم ہوتی ہے کہ روزہ رکھنے میں حرج نہیں ہے۔ ہاں، اگر ہلکا سا بھی شبہ ہے تو فوراً روزہ ترک کر دیں۔
ناظرین اکرام، انڈونیشیا سے جلسہ مسیح موعود علیہ السلام کے حوالے سے ایک رپورٹ ہے، ملاحظہ فرمائیے۔
جماعت احمدیہ انڈونیشیا نے اپنی سابقہ روایت کے مطابق امسال بھی مورخہ 23 مارچ سن 2020 بروز سوموار یوم مسیح موعود علیہ الصلوۃ والسلام کا انعقاد کیا۔ امسال کرونا وائرس کے پھیلاؤ کو روکنے کے لیے حکومتی احکامات کو ملحوظ رکھتے ہوئے روایتی جلسے کے بجائے MTA اسٹوڈیو میں ایک علمی نشست کا اہتمام کیا گیا۔ اس علمی نشست میں حضرت مسیح موعود علیہ الصلوۃ والسلام کی حیات طیبہ پر مختلف زاویوں سے روشنی ڈالی گئی۔ جن علماء کرام نے حضرت مسیح موعود علیہ الصلوۃ والسلام کی حیات طیبہ پر تقاریر پیش کیں، ان میں مشنری انچارج مولانا معراج الدین صاحب، نیشنل تربیت سیکریٹری مولانا احمد سپاردی صاحب، نیشنل امیر جماعت مولانا عبد الباسط صاحب شامل ہیں۔ اس پروگرام کو 8000 سے زائد افراد نے براہ راست ملاحظہ کیا۔
ناظرین کرام، UK سے بیت الفتوح کی تعمیر کے حوالے سے ایک فنڈ ریزنگ اپیل کی رپورٹ ہے، ملاحظہ فرمائیے۔
بیت الفتوح مسجد مغربی یورپ کی سب سے بڑی اور برطانیہ کی بھی سب سے بڑی مسجد ہے۔ مورخہ 14 مارچ 2020 بروز ہفتہ کو بیت الفتوح علاقے کی جانب سے امداد اکٹھی کرنے کے لیے عشائیہ کا انعقاد کیا گیا۔ اس درخواست کا مقصد ستمبر 2015 میں لگنے والی آگ کے بعد مسجد کی تعمیر نو کے لیے امداد اکٹھی کرنا تھا، جس میں مسجد کے انتظامی بلاک اور 50% نچلی اور پہلی منزل کے حالوں کو نقصان پہنچا تھا۔ اس تقریب میں مرد و خواتین سمیت 330 سے زائد مہمانوں کو مدعو کیا گیا تھا۔ پروگرام کا آغاز تلاوت قرآن کریم سے ہوا۔
مثل الذين ينفقون أموالهم في سبيل الله.
جماعت احمدیہ کے لیے بیت الفتوح مسجد کی تاریخ اور اہمیت کے بارے میں حاضرین کے لیے ایک پریزنٹیشن پیش کی گئی. پریزنٹیشن کے بعد تقریب میں مختلف مہمانوں نے خطاب کیا، جن میں شامل ہیں بیت الفتوح کے علاقائی امیر مکرم نسیم جمال صاحب.
Our region is named after this mosque. Yeah? So this is, for many of us, a daily place that we come for worship and for other purposes. So we have this extra responsibility placed on us. So please dig deep today, because we're at a critical phase of the project.
قومی سیکرٹری جائیداد مکرم عرفان